Hello everyone, welcome back to Be the Whole You. My name is Gullveig and I have a lovely new co-host. Her name is Wednesday. She just became a member of our family this week, unexpectedly. Her and I bonded immediately, and so she decided that she wanted to come home with me. So welcome Wednesday to our full moon in Capricorn reading, which will also be a very special reading this week because we're also going to be talking about Lionsgate, which starts on July 28th. So just stay tuned. So let's take a look. Okay, so the full moon is in Capricorn on July 21st. July 22nd if you are Europe or east of Europe, I believe. So the sun is in Cancer at 29 degrees, the moon is in Capricorn at 29 degrees, and it is having a conjunction with Pluto at 0 degrees in Aquarius. It also trines Uranus at 26 degrees in Taurus and Mars at 0 degrees in Gemini. And this trine is very important. The sun also trines Uranus and Taurus and Mars and Gemini as well. So what we have here is Uranus is the planet of change and Mars is the planet of gusto. In some ways we could consider it like associated with courage, passion, and in its shadow aspect, aggression. But when we have Uranus and Taurus, what that means is that we have changes that are coming that are in our practical life, home, health, wealth, job, career, family. Those kind of changes are coming, and sometimes they'll come very quickly. And on top of that, we have Pluto, which is also conjuncting the moon at 0 degrees, and Pluto at 0 degrees in Aquarius. And Pluto is also the planet of death and rebirth. And Aquarius is the sign that's associated with Uranus. So we have change all over the place with this full moon. So the sun represents our identity or how we want to step out into the world. And then the moon is associated with our emotional self. So both the sun and the moon are trining Mars, which is giving us that fire, that gusto to make the changes that are necessary. And with Gemini, and with it being at 0 degrees in Gemini, it will very much have a effect on how we communicate. I can see that a lot of us will have a heightened sense of creativity. And then we have the way that we're expressing ourselves is changing, and the way we're also feeling is changing. When we get to the Lionsgate piece of this reading, I'm going to explain how all of this energy really has been kind of percolating ever since July 5th. And so this particular full moon, it represents a milestone. A lot of us are going to see endings within this full moon. And we will be having this sense that we'll be preparing for a new beginning in a very practical, very tangible sense. And this transition into this new beginning, like a lot of times our logical mind wants to think of like the ending being very finite and kind of a line in the sand and new beginnings, but typically in life it's more of a gradual transition where you have a slow letting go of the old and then a crescendo into the new beginning. And that's what we're going to see here. So this milestone, for some of us, it might come quite quickly, but for most of us, it will probably crescendo out into the next full moon coming into August. So this is very much setting the tone, and most of us have started feeling the energy of this alignment percolating ever since July 5th. So there will be emotional closure that we will have. So if there's any kind of last vestiges of something that we've really been holding on to and really attached to, it's going to become very obvious within this full moon of what things we just will not be able to bring with us in the next phase, in the next new beginnings. And for some of us, that might be relationships. So, and then the Capricorn energy is very pragmatic. It's about, what are you going to do about it? Also, if there are obstacles that have been feeling rather insurmountable lately, limitations and restrictions that have been feeling really binding in your life lately, Capricorn is the optimum sign to overcome any kind of obstacles. It is associated with the billy goat, where it jumps from one rock to another. Like, you know, it's a hoofed animal that can like stand on the tiny little precipice of a cliff. And it's also associated with the sea goat, meaning it can dive into the deepest depths. So from the highest highs to lowest lows, Capricorn knows how to navigate the extreme polarities of life. So this is a very supportive kind of full moon for any of us who may be faced with the necessity to make big changes. And then we have 10 days later, the moon is going to reach Uranus and Mars. And so between July 21st and July 31st, what we're going to see is the moon is going to be catching up with some other slower planets. So it's going to first a conjunct with Saturn, and then it's going to conjunct with Neptune, then the North Node, and then in Chiron. So between the 21st and the 31st, the moon is going to conjunct these planets, and that's going to represent a decrescendo, if you will, of the letting go process. So Saturn is associated with Capricorn, and so when the moon catches up with Saturn, probably about a week or so later, if I remember right, then Saturn is also associated with that Capricorn energy. It's time-bound consciousness. It's limitation, but also Saturn can be used to create structure. So that might be a way to approach any kind of restriction or limitation that you might be feeling in your life, is what parts of the limitation are actually sabotagey and restrictive and confining and boxing you in, and which parts of the limitation might be able to repurposed in some way that actually can create a supportive structure. And so when it reaches Saturn, we will be feeling those limitations pretty viscerally. And then when the moon touches Neptune, we will be delving into the imaginative and the subconscious. You know, Neptune is associated with Pisces, it's associated with deep spirituality. We'll be digging deep within ourselves to find new resources and to get clarity on how we want to resurrect. How do we want to have this new beginning? Because then shortly thereafter, we have the North Node. And the North Node, when the moon touches the North Node, that's going to allow us to take stock of the limitations that we've already been feeling very intensely, and as well as the possibilities that the expansive energy of Neptune offers. And we'll be able to start playing and exploring with the idea of like, how can that perspective, how can it be applied to the next new beginning? Because the North Node is about purpose, it's about mission, and it's about our trajectory in life in general. And then shortly thereafter, the moon touches the North Node, it goes into Chiron. And when it conjuncts with Chiron, we'll have some clarity around what personal wounds, because Chiron is the wounded healer. It is it's an asteroid that's associated with taking the lemons of life and making lemonade. It's taking the venom and making anti-venom out of it. So this is really going to be a touchstone where we will be invited to truly create tangible transformation that will have perhaps ramifications that might even last the rest of our lives. It's possible, with as deep as this energy is. And then we have then very shortly thereafter, we have Lionsgate. So officially Lionsgate is recognized on August 8th. Most of you have probably, if you're into Lionsgate, if you look this up, you'll see like 8/8 is the official date that Lionsgate is recognized at. And Lionsgate represents a time when our star Sirius aligns with our, it's considered our spiritual sun, and it aligns with our physical sun and planet Earth. And so truly this year, it actually starts on July 28th and goes through to August 12th. Excuse me, Missy. Excuse me. Hey, please stop doing that. So it starts on July 28th and it goes through August 12th. And then right in the middle there, we will have the next new moon on August 4th, which I will talk about in our next video coming up in a couple weeks. The reason why it's associated with August 8th is because the number 8 is associated with the constellation of Leo, and it's also associated with the Strength card in the tarot deck, which has the picture of the lion and the lady in white. And the number 8, when it's turned on its side, is associated with cycles. So because of the number 8 being associated with the constellation of Leo and the Strength card and cycles, 8/8 is also a very important sign in numerology. That's why it's associated with August 8th. But this energy lasts a lot longer than just that one day. So we're going to choose to celebrate it on July 28th. So if you are in the Phoenix area and you are wanting to take advantage of this cosmic portal that is opening, do join us on July 28th. The information will be in the description below. So what's also very interesting is we've been playing with this Capricorn Cancer energy for the last month. On June 21st, we had a full moon in Capricorn. It was at 1 degree in Capricorn, which is in numerology the number associated with new beginnings and with our identity. And then we had the new moon on July 5th in Cancer at 14 degrees. And then now we have another full moon in Capricorn on July 21st. So Capricorn represents the sacred masculine and the father figure, our masculine energy, and Cancer is associated with motherly energy, the sacred feminine. And so with all of this energy that it's been going on in the last month or so, and it's going to continue until the end of August, with basically it's like a makeover for the soul. It's this revamping of our lives, of our egos, of our personas, our identity, how we want to step out into the world. Like a lot of it's in the air. People are just taking stock and re-strategizing. And I don't think that there is any just coincidence that we have this kind of, almost like a back and forth, to and fro kind of energy between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. We have the masculine side, which is asking us about our relationships to what we do and how we put ourselves out into the world, how we act in the world. And then we have the sacred feminine, which is asking us to take stock of, well, how do you feel? How do you regulate your emotions? How are you just being in the world? And how do you nurture yourself? So basically doing versus being, intuition versus logic. It's asking us to take stock of our relationships. It's asking us to take stock of our emotional needs versus our practical needs. And it's no coincidence that we have this to and fro that has almost been playing tug of war with us between the polarities of our energy and of our psyche, that will help us take stock of all of the mass duality that all of us have within ourselves as human beings. So going into Lionsgate then says, like a week after the full moon, we have the beginning of Lionsgate on July 28th. And so there's lots of really helpful alignments within this Lionsgate that is going to help kind of, pull that trajectory that really started back on June 21st. And to pull those themes through, almost like midwifing us into our new beginning, into our new version of ourselves, into whatever it is that we consider to be rising out of. And so one of the helpful alignments is obviously the sun is in Leo, because all Lionsgate happens in the sign of Leo. And the Lionsgate portal really represents a time in which we have our spiritual self, our practical self, which is also very interesting because we got this, I think that very mirrors the Capricorn Cancer relationship as well, the emotional self versus the practical self. And when Lionsgate happens, we have an alignment between those two things, which is why it's said that this time is such a potent time for manifestation. So be careful on how you direct your thoughts. How do you direct your feelings? Be careful of pessimism, because what we're going to experience when we go into Lionsgate is there will be a squaring off of Jupiter and Saturn, where we are going to feel almost like sometimes we're going to feel so expansive and lucky and grateful and like everything's going our way, and then we're going to be dropped right into like the polar opposite of Saturn, which is going to feel very restrictive and limited, and we might be revisiting like victim mentality and things of that nature. Be careful not to fall into pessimism, because it will cut off our critical thinking and our creativity, which is going to be heightened during Lionsgate, because there's a ton of Gemini energy, as well as it was Gemini, as well as Leo. So we have Gemini, which is creative and communicative, and Leo will gives us a bit of that strength and that courage to step out into the world and really start embodying and acting in this new way of being. So we have the Leo, the sun in Leo, which sextiles Mars, which is in Gemini. We have that same Leo sun, which is trining Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is at home and is happy in Pisces. And then it opposes Pluto, which gives us enough of friction to make it worth our while to do the hard things. And then we have the sun trining the North Node in Aries, which gives us a lot of clarity and a lot of direction on what our next step is. And then we have Mars in Gemini that's conjuncting Jupiter in Gemini and Uranus in Taurus. So Uranus has been in Taurus for a while. It's going to stay there for a little bit longer. And so that is really one of the things that's really creating a lot of these changes in our practical world, in career, in home, in health, wealth, and so on and so forth, our families. And Jupiter is in Gemini, so it's going to expand that creativity. It's going to expand our ability to communicate. And Mars is also in Gemini, so this really activates that Gemini energy. So as long as we can stay out of the pessimism piece, we will be able to take full advantage of all that creativity and that clarity that Gemini has to offer. The thing too is that we also have the thing about the squaring is like, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable because it's going to pull us back and forth. But it also is going to give us the opportunity to be very pragmatic and structured in how we plan our steps ahead. So this is not an alignment where we're just going to be so uncomfortable that we're just willing to just do anything, and then we end up making very chaotic decisions that really aren't in our best interest in the long run. This is definitely more of a grounded, centered alignment, and that's really good because Gemini is very airy, and if we didn't have all of this grounding energy, we might float away within the creativity and that we might be feeling. So it's really good to actually have a little bit of the challenge that helps root us in reality. There's also this feeling within this time where the restriction is almost like a rubber band of reflex. So, the cycles, they always work in expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. That's how we breathe, right? Expansion, contraction. And that's how the universe works. That's how cycles work. And so we're going to be feeling a bit of this contraction, but it's almost like when a cat, when it grounds, and it's contracting its body in preparation to pounce, in preparation to jump. Or when you're pulling that rubber band back and you have that tension allows us to move ahead. That is the energy of June 21st through the end of August, is this pulling back of the rubber band so that we can move ahead quickly, so we can gain lots of momentum. And if we don't get caught up in lack mentality and pessimism, we can really take full advantage of that contraction. The contraction, if it makes you uncomfortable, if it's painful in some way, it's not an indication that you did anything wrong, and it's not an indication that you're on the wrong path or that you're not in the flow. Sometimes the flow are rapids. Sometimes like the flow is like down, like it feels like it's a waterfall. It's still the flow. And so it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that change can feel very difficult. And one thing I wanted to just offer, if it's okay for me to give any kind of advice at all, is in regards to the pessimism piece, because a lot of us are going to be emotionally kind of pulled back and forth between the possibilities and the limitations, the dreams and the aspirations, and then that might be that part of our psyche that's like, well, that's not realistic, that's not true. There's a lot of talk about in community, spiritual communities and such, about the law of attraction and staying positive. And all of that is somewhat true, but it's not the whole truth. Because if you're looking in the mirror and you're saying affirmations, but you're feeling like you're lying to yourself, it's going to probably take a while for you to get results. It's going to take you a while to start to feel like you're not lying to yourself anymore. So let me just recommend this, because this has really helped me during times where I have felt like I've been in the abyss, so to speak, where I don't really know how things are going to work out, and it's hard for me to see the forest from the trees. We've all been there. As human beings, we've all experienced this. We don't always talk about it, but this is part of the human experience. Instead of trying to feel like I'm lying to myself by telling myself how everything's going to be okay and trying to almost micromanage it through intention, it has worked better to take a stance of curiosity. How might this work? How can it work? Especially if I'm not really sure of what the possibilities are. And the thing is that none of us can ever see all of the possibilities. Like, there are possibilities behind the possibilities out there. There's synchronicities beyond synchronicities. So none of us are going to be able to see all of those possibilities at the same time. So because of that, we can live in the realm of possibilities, not from a place of spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity, but from a place of just curiosity. And that can help distance ourselves from the more uncomfortable, pessimistic parts of our psyche, of like, the parts of our psyche that's like, this isn't realistic, this isn't going to work. And we can just love that part of ourselves and say, I can see that you're trying to protect me, brain. And let's just see what might happen if we just ask the universe, how might this work? How could it work? And then see what happens. For me, that curious approach has gotten results a lot quicker than the approach of trying to tell myself that everything's all right, everything's good, and everything happens for a reason. Those kind of things can work if we're in a very acute situation where it isn't really, really painful. But for the times in our lives that are really painful, those kind of things can feel, they can just feel unhelpful. They can actually feels like it almost like it puts gasoline on the fire. So if that feels very gaslighty to yourself, to, those kind of affirmations at this time just don't resonate, don't use them. You don't have to be Pollyanna in order to be effective. You can just be curious. Like, I wonder how this dumpster fire is going to go out. If you don't know how to put out the dumpster fire, it makes no sense in worrying about it because you can't control it. So we might as well just take an attitude of curiosity to see how might it work out, because typically it does. I mean, I think most of the folks who are watching this at some point in time, if you're not in the abyss right now, at some point in time, you've probably experienced it. And if you've come out onto the other side and you're looking back at what has been, I mean, I think a lot of us can say like, wow, I had no idea how that was going to work out, and look how it worked out. This has I guarantee you that this is going to probably be the same type of thing, where we're going to look back and we're going to see and be very proud of ourselves of how we have taken the poison and we have transmuted it into medicine. So let's ask the cards how we might, because I'm going to ask the cards how we might best utilize both the full moon in Capricorn on July 21st, as well as Lionsgate on July 28th. Starting on July 28th, goes through August 12th. All right. And just set the intention that like whatever part of this card reading resonates most with your situation, and whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life, that it will be evident that that part is for you. Well, all right, guys, there are some really good energies that are coming through with this one. So even if some of the aspects of this full moon and Lionsgate might feel a little jagged, a little edgy, there's definitely a bright side. There's good stuff on the horizon. And this is why I say this. So we have the Emperor. And the Emperor is actually associated with Aries, and it's associated with the sacred masculine. It's associated with the sovereign self. And we have the Sun card. This is one of the best cards in the deck, folks. This is success. It is the bright side, literally. And what's really interesting is later on, not only, this represents our physical sun, right? And then we have the Strength card. This is the card that I was just referring to, associated with the number 8 in the sign of Leo. In this particular context of this reading, I think this is talking about Lionsgate. How we can, and then right between the two cards, right between the physical sun and what I think this represents the star Sirius, because the star Sirius is what creates a Lionsgate portal. That's our spiritual sun. Right between these two things, the alignment between these two celestial bodies is the Two of Wands and the Two of Swords reversed. So the fact that these are twos is not just a coincidence. That both of them are the number 2 is not just a coincidence. The number 2 represents relationships. It represents polarity. And the Two of Wands represents an individual who is preparing for a journey. His ship has not yet come in, but he's packing his bags. And then we have the Two of Swords, and when it's reversed, is that there is a reluctance for us to make a particular decision. And that might be delaying this guy's ship from coming in. So what this is saying is that for a lot of us that are watching this, that the universe is basically waiting for you. It's waiting for you to make a decision. It's waiting for its orders. What is it that you want to create? And the Emperor is saying that whatever decision that you come up with, it really has to be about what do you need to feel most effective, to feel most courageous, and to feel like you're the authority of your own life. It really needs to come from this place of self-empowerment. There are times in which we need to put other people's needs before our own. But if that is always what we're doing, and especially if we start feeling resentful as a result, that is a very clear indication that it's time to check in. And it's time to put our own selves first, because We are all here to be a divine expression of the divine. So if we're not staying true to ourselves and we're not putting ourselves first, then what will end up happening is that our soul doesn't get the opportunity to express itself in its fruition, in its full fruition. So if your heart is to be of service to others, then ask yourself, in what way could you be of service to others that also simultaneously honors yourself, honors how your heart wants to express yourself? Because there's a million different ways that you could help people, a million different ways. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be selfish and we have to choose them versus us. It can be reciprocal. How can it be reciprocal? So I feel like I need to pull one more card for some reason. Okay, I think it's around the Two of Swords. What will help us make this decision? All right, well, 3 cards came out. All right, folks, what will help us make this decision is the Death card comes up reversed, which means that there is a resistance to letting go. So there is a need to just be gracious with the grieving process, to allow ourselves the time that we need for our hearts to have a type of closure. And that will, and the week between July 21st and July 28th will be a big week for this, where our hearts will have closure of a particular milestone. The Seven of Wands is about being defensive, and when it's reversed, it's like self-defensive. If there are certain things that we are not making a particular decision based on how we think other people will perceive us, the Seven of Wands reverse is saying that, like, that essentially is our imagination, that how we imagine the ramifications of making the quote-unquote wrong decision are not nearly as bad as we think they are. In fact, if we don't make a decision, the consequences are going to be a lot more uncomfortable. And the Six of Wands, pretty much it states what the Emperor just stated. And when cards, when they're repeating in themselves, it's a ding, ding, ding from the universe. It's not like a little sign. It's like, hey, just in case you missed it the first time, here it is again. The Six of Wands is about leadership. And in this case, it's about being the authority of your own life, being the leader of your own life. You know, like, this might sound maybe a little harsh, but there is no one out there who's going to save us. There's no one out there that it can live our life for us. The decision that we need to make needs to come from a place of, what kind of life do I want to live, and what are the small incremental decisions that I can make that will really help me align between where I am at and where I want to go. Make the decision for you. And rest assured that if you make the decision that's best for you, it will have a ripple effect where other people will also benefit from it as well. Because when you give yourself the permission to unabashedly be yourself, you inadvertently give other people to do the same. And when everybody's aligned with their purpose, their truth, and their joy, we end up having a ripple effect where the world just becomes a better place. So all you need to do is just be you. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining me. And if you would like to join us for the Lionsgate ceremony, where we will use a sound healing as well as a crystal grid to literally step into this new beginning. Ritual is a very potent, very important type of modality that has been around since before there was writing. And there's a reason for that, is because it's how we interface the spiritual world, our emotions, our subconscious with the physical world. So if you're wanting to take full advantage of this time, I am hosting a Lionsgate ceremony on the first day of Lionsgate, which is July 28th. and at Everything Just Rocks in Tempe, Arizona. More information is in the details below. All right, everyone, thanks you so much for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you back here on when we talk about the new moon on August 4th. Take care.